Thank you, Boran. What stuck with me from your remarks is learning happens everywhere. We learned that the hard way during COVID. It's not just confined in these 19th century's classrooms. It's happening in communities and in families and everywhere. So thank you for your remarks. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker. Shafiq Khan is the president and CEO of Teach the World Foundation.
Morning, afternoon, I've lost track of time, but good to see you all. I am here as Teach the World Foundation. We call ourselves Modestly Teach the World. And the reason for that is the problem we have cannot be solved by modest solutions. The problem is so massive that I think even today I haven't heard the scale of the problem that I am seeing practically in my own experience. Right now, the stats are that 1 billion people cannot read and write. The reality, in my view, is the number is at least twice that. If that is true, and I don't think the scale of the problem is big enough that you don't need to worry about, this is not an accounting exercise. You don't need to worry about the exactitude of it. We know that the number is over 1 billion, which would be 1/7 of the population of the world. We believe it's 2 billion because every country, and we work with so many of them, understates the numbers. And so it's 2 billion. So let's go, and indulge me and go with 2 billion. 2 billion people out of the planet of 8 billion is 1 person in 4. Imagine what that is doing to them as individuals. So they are clearly suffering. Imagine what's doing to the 6 billion who may end up supporting them, who may end up being somewhat drained, who at minimum end up with a lost opportunity. So these 2 billion cannot buy from the 6 billion. These 6 billion cannot sell to them. They cannot benefit from them. So at the end of the day, the scale of the problem is huge. And what does it lead to? I mean, I believe we can ascribe many of the world's problems, from hunger to poverty to social unrest, frankly, perhaps politically incorrect to say, even terrorism, right? And crime, longevity, and so on, to the lack of education, and thus the lack of opportunity. So that's the challenge we have taken, and that's why we call ourselves Teach the World. Why am I here? I'm here largely because I'm a digital transformation leader from corporate America. One of the things I do believe in is that businesses have done far better with digital transformation than the world of social impact. And the reason I came into this was I saw an opportunity, a massive opportunity, to actually create impact in the education space, because to me the ROI of education is greater than anything I could have done in travel, where we launched online booking, e-ticketing for the travel industry. Far, far, far greater. So at this point, that's why we're in it. We're here today also because we are a prime, on-the-ground beneficiary of XPRIZE. We are people who operate today in 3 countries of the world. These are 3 of the poorest countries of the world: Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Malawi. You've heard about many of these. And at this point, I can say that the single best thing that happened to us and for us was getting involved with the XPRIZE as an implementation partner in the first round, 2019, getting to now deploy their model everywhere we are. So in fact, the two winners of the XPRIZE are frankly, for us, the prime curriculum that we teach. The results for us are outstanding. Right now, the average student we have, and this is not the geniuses, there are many, unfortunately. There are many who would be lost and left behind. But we get these, and they end up doing 1.5 times to 3 times better than the average control group that we use, which is the traditional systems. So our conclusion also is that there is no solution through traditional systems. There's none. There's no question of that. In Pakistan alone, for instance, you would have to create 80,000 schools, which means 20 schools a day for 20 years. It's not going to happen. We'd have to train 500,000 teachers. Not going to happen for years. And the reason why we need to do it quickly is every day a child is not in school. They're 5 years old, not in school. In many of these countries, they're never going to go to school. There's a big chance they're never going to school. If you're 10 years old and not in school, you are almost 100% not going to go to school, partly because you can sell newspapers in the street, you can work at a mechanic shop, you can clean house with your mom. Eventually, the economic pressures will make that happen. So we've got to address this. And to address this, we do need people like XPRIZE. So in my view, XPRIZE actually catalyzed this development of all the software. We've talked about this. Alex has talked about this. Andrew has talked about this. Anusha has talked about this. And I'm very grateful, Anusha, for leading this and making this happen, because it will take people like you, it will take game changers like you to change the game. And frankly, what you've done, I can tell you, is probably bigger than even you realize. And what we want to do is to make sure more and more and more of that happens. So at this point, my recommendation is, I love the Accelerate program. I think it's going to be great. I think we really need to go into deployment models. We have multiple deployment models in the world. Ours is such, to just give you an example, we'll go into a slum that will not have a school for 20 years because it's a slum, because it's unincorporated, because the government doesn't have the money, all sorts of reasons. We'll take a room, set up solar, just rent it, and equip it with 25 tablets with XPRIZE curriculum as the primary, and there are others too, but the primary curriculum is XPRIZE. And within a matter of weeks, we now have these kids, 100 kids learning 2 hours at a time, 4 shifts. And in a community of 10,000 people, if we can set up 5 of these, it changes the community. We're doing it all the time. Right now, we are at about 100 schools, and we've only started, and all of them have your software, your applications, and we need to be able to do more of that. That's why I really think we should have a competition on deployment models. The average cost per child is $100 a year. Now, that may even seem high, given some of the things we've seen with Accelerate Learning, and that's something we want to talk to you about, because practically speaking, we've got to think about what will work best. And at the end of the day, the ROI on what we can do is just massive. The other thing I really applaud you for is the brilliant thinking, because frankly, we had come to the same formula ourselves, and then uncannily found that you guys are doing digital learning, tablet-based, game-based, which we felt was essential given the absence of teachers, given the need for motivating a child who doesn't want to go to a school. I mean, in the developing world, the schools are not very hospitable, very pleasant. With what we do now, we set up a school, we have people lining up, they don't have watches and clocks. They come in ahead of time, and we've got 25 kids waiting when they are not due for another couple of hours. And so I do believe we've got to keep the game changing happening. And the next game changer I see is, again, accelerate learning is going to be great. There are iterations and variations on that are also necessary. I also want to make one final point. Some of the best work that I've seen in social impact has frankly come from organizations that have adopted business practices. And I'm finding that that's helping me tremendously. In fact, Gates, I'm a great fan of Gates. To me, in fact, Bill and Melinda should be canonized and sainted for the impact they're having. But at the same time, the business practices and the discipline you're putting into it is actually making you do for malaria and polio what the WHO hasn't been able to do for 50, 60 years. And those are things we've got to keep doing. And that's why all of us here, it will take a village, all of us here need to step up. The one thing I'm going to request the UN, the World Bank, and other agencies that are now big, and sorry, this will be a very unpopular thing to say, they become very bureaucratized. They're no longer nimble. They're no longer risk takers. And without risk, you cannot solve the biggest problems in the world. One of the best things I heard today from XPRIZE and UNGA was the risk taking. You have to take a risk. And the risk is, it's all, in business, you take a risk because of the upside. You look at the upside. I don't think here you've got to even think about the upside. In my case, I can tell you that, and in all our cases, right? If you guys, all of us, could not read and write, just imagine where we'd be. Right? And it is life-changing to teach somebody to read and to write. So I think we need to get into this. We need to do it together, and we need to do it with all of us. And I'm not criticizing the big, what I call the global education establishment, but I do believe that we've got to get into a mode where we find things in innovation that we are willing to bet on. And yes, as we learned in business, we don't make big bang bets. We only need to do small bets and find that they work, and then scale them, and then scale them, and then scale them. And we can do that. So with that, thank you for having me here. And most of all, thank you for doing what you guys are doing. And thank you all for being here, because obviously you wouldn't be here if you didn't believe in furthering this mission of educating the world. Teach the world. Thank you.
Are these yours, sir? No. Thank you so much for your remarks. And I would say we're so proud to have today two major UN agencies, UNESCO and UNICEF, and I'll introduce our next speaker in a moment. Because even though it's really easy sometimes to say the UN is too big and not operating as efficiently as maybe the private sector, but one of the most interesting things about the SDGs is that the UN did open up to more stakeholders, did open up to more transformational kind of thinking. And this is the very reason we're here today and have the ability to have something like XPRIZE presented to the world's foremost organization.